Welcome to today's webcast entitled 10 Things You Need to Do to Have a Chance at Success in Selling to the Government. My name is Nate, and I'll be your event specialist today. If you should need technical assistance, please type your inquiry into the tech support box on the left side of your screen and click on the Send button. If you're disconnected from the webcast, you can log in again using the login instructions provided to you. If you cannot log back in with these instructions, please call support at 866-271-7592. It is now my pleasure to turn the webcast over to Suken Shah. Suken, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nate, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our August webinar featuring Mark Amtower. Mark is the founding partner of Amtower Company. He's also a nationally known consultant, speaker, author, and radio host. Mark is known as the Godfather of government marketing, and he is among the most widely quoted and interviewed consultants in the country. He's appeared on numerous radio shows and has been quoted in over 100 publications, including the Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, Forbes magazine, and many others. We're very excited to have Mark this morning, and Mark, we're going to turn it over to you and let you go.
Great. Suken, thank you very much, and thank you guys for having me. We're going to hold the questions until the end. We've reserved about 15 or 20 minutes for that, so queue them up as you have them, and we can go back as far as you want on this. But let's start by setting sort of the landscape here. Slide 2, please. Thank you. You have to look at the government as a market, and I understand for a lot of people this is difficult, but the easiest way, I think, to understand that is to think about this. There are about 90,000 separate governmental entities in the continental U.S., counting the U.S. federal government as one. There are over 3,000 counties, over 19,000 municipalities, 16,504 townships. There's 35,052 special district governments, over 13,000 school districts, 512 Native American nations, 50 states, the District of Columbia, and 6 U.S. territories. The U.S. government all governments in the United States spend approximately 35% of the GDP. So about a third of the economy, even this economy, is driven by the government. And yeah, we're in tough times right now, but the government still has to spend. We still want our services, and regardless of political stripe, it is going to continue. And your job, should you decide to look at it that way, is to start getting some of your money back from not only Uncle Sam, but state and local governments as well. So in order to do that, you have to look at two things very carefully: what you offer and what the government does that may require what you offer. So you need to start understanding what the executive branch of the federal government does, and we're going to focus on the feds today. So what would the agency need that you offer that they might be able to use to accomplish their mission? Then you need to find out how agencies acquire, and it's not a simple matter here. There are a variety of contractual vehicles out there that the government uses. And if you happen to have a storefront for, say, office supplies or hardware, things like that, the government probably already walks in with their credit card and purchases stuff from you. The SmartPay credit card in government accounted for just about $20 billion of activity last year, and a lot of that was transactional business in local storefronts. And the only way you're going to see is if you look at the credit card and you see that U.S. government logo on it, because otherwise it just looks like a MasterCard or a Visa card. So think about where you fit and accept that you need to constantly keep learning about the government market. I've been doing this for 30 years now, and I can't stop learning because the market evolves. The procurement regulations change, the contractual vehicles alter, how the government weighs factors in those contractual vehicles constantly alters. So there's a number of things that you have to stay on top of. May I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. The infrastructure issues needed to approach the government market have to be considered by top management. If you have a complex product or service, it may be easier to teach your people how to sell to the government than to bring in new people to teach them the nuances of your product or service. However, if you have a relatively less complex product or service, it may be easier just to hire someone who has experience selling to the government and teach them about your product. The accounting issues, I'm not going to get into these deep, but you have to be aware of them. The government requires a different type of accounting, and you have different reporting to the agencies on your contractual vehicles, and these have to be done the way the government wants. So you have to keep that in mind. Same thing with legal issues. The contractual nuances of the government are not typical business-to-business contracts. So you have to have legal assistance that is familiar with the government market. Bid and proposal, same thing. Your bid and proposal team has to understand how the government does the bidding process, how they weigh the responses to bids, and you have to be well within the confines of the bid in order to be considered. You do not change the terms and conditions of a government bid, and I've seen companies do it. So it's one of those strange but true things from us. And then there's certifications. Are you going to require certifications or clearances for your jobs? Some contracts are going to call for certain certifications in security, facilities management, etc. So if you do not have those certifications, you're going to basically eliminate yourself from the bid. The clearances are on the security side, and they are going to involve either the law enforcement agencies or the intel community. So if you're going after that market, that's a totally different animal. Next slide, please. Now we're going to start our research. If you have a printout or if you have a pen and paper there, gsa.gov, G-O-V, gsa.gov. On the left-hand side, you'll see a button for the GSA e-library. This will take you to a website that will show you everything about the GSA schedules, including who has what kind of contract. You can search on it by the name of the contractor or the manufacturer. So if you sell a certain type of product from a certain manufacturer, you can go there and see if the government's already buying it and find out who is selling it. There's other tools where you may be able to determine sort of ballpark figures on actually how much money those contractors are making, maybe not from that specific product, but how much they're making from this market. FBO.gov. FBO is pretty cool. It's the Federal Business Opportunities website. And this is where, you may have read about it or heard about it, this is where the government posts bids over $25,000. Now, not all bids over $25,000 show up here because they often turn out to be task orders on other contracts. And a lot of people say that if it shows up at FBO, it's already wired to a particular contractor. But this is not the only way that you can use FBO. You can go back and see which buying offices have a history of buying particular types of products and services. You can search on this by keyword. You can search on this by agency. So as a research tool, it is very good. As a contract tracking tool, there may be some that are better. The OMB 300 I'll take care of on the next slide. Trade publications are excellent research tools, and we're talking about not just the ones that face the government, but also some of the ones that face industry but cover government issues. But on the government side, Government Executive Magazine and Governing Magazine cover the management issues facing government. Government Executive is for primarily federal. Governing Magazine deals with state and local issues. So if your target audience is the management community in either, those are good resources to determine exactly what the issues are that are facing that community. For the pure product side of things, Government Product News is an excellent publication from Penton Publishing. Penton also puts out a publication called American City and County. American City and County talks about like municipal infrastructure, so roads, traffic lights, sewers, construction, all of that sort of thing is covered there. For the more technical issues, you have Government Security Magazine, Government Computer News, Federal Computer Week, Government Technology, and a variety of other. All of these are available online, and they're open to the public. And there are a variety of associations also that focus on the government market and subsets of other associations. For instance, the International Facilities Management Association, IFMA, has a very active government chapter, as does the Building Owners and Management Association, BOMA. You have associations like Tech America, which is a community, an association for information technology manufacturers and software companies. They're very active in the government market. For small businesses, there's the American Small Business Coalition. There are a variety. If you would like to find one that suits your needs, I saw that there was an engineering firm question. There's a Society of Military Engineers, SME, that I don't know if you can join if you're not in the military, but they certainly look for sponsors for their events and exhibitors for their events, that type of thing. So there's associations and special interest groups out there for a variety of special interest. Next slide, please. The OMB 300 I'll cover very briefly. The Office of Management and Budget requires every governmental agency, military and civilian, to supply the Office of Management and Budget, which is part of the White House, a Form 300 every year. Form 300 is their long-range, 12-month and beyond planning, budgeting, acquisition for assets that they believe they are going to need. So this actually tells you where they anticipate spending money over the next year plus. All of this is public information. You can ferret it out at the government websites. There's a couple of online resources, also paid services that have all of them there. But they are available for free in the government websites. And if you have a difficult time finding them, just go to the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA reading room. Every government agency has one, and that's where you'll find it. Next slide, please. So now we have to, after we're doing a little bit of research here, let's determine where you fit. You target an agency predicated on what they buy, and you match that with what you sell. Not brain surgery, but here's the trick. Most companies coming into this market say, I'm going to sell to the government. Number one, you're selling to a person, not to the government. Number two, if you focus too broadly and you're brand new to the market, you're not likely to get traction. So it's much better to focus on one or two agencies max, knowing that they actually buy what you sell. And if at all possible, target agencies that have local offices to you so you can actually go in there and start meeting some people. Excuse me, I took a sip there. When you figure out which agencies are going to be best for you, government agency websites are truly robust, and they offer a wealth of information. So devouring their websites may take you more time than you think, because there's always deeper links and links to off-site stuff, and I suggest you look through as much of that as possible. If you are looking to sell to the government via current or emerging contracts as opposed to the GSA, focus on one agency and focus on one or two contracts max. Again, you have to focus your energy in order to generate any traction here. If you focus too broadly, you're not going to be able to devote the resources necessary to meet the people involved in the contract, both on the contractor side and the government side. So keep it simple, focus on one or two. The prime contract holders. Here's an easy way to research the prime contract holders. The trade pubs are always a wealth of information, and if you're in the information technology arena, one that I didn't mention is Washington Technology Magazine. But focusing on the primes, if you are not on LinkedIn, let me strongly suggest to you that you get on LinkedIn, because all of the major government contractors are there, and you can find their key personnel there. You can find the groups that they belong to. You can become visible to them through LinkedIn. And you don't have to be a paid member of LinkedIn to do that. So I strongly suggest that you look at the social networking tools as another research arm. The last question is kind of loaded here. Does the agency buy from the GSA schedules? Yes, most agencies do buy from the GSA schedules. In the GSA schedules, there's 43 or 44 schedules. Each schedule is a contract that covers a specific type of product or service that the government buys, and there's about 10 or 12,000 companies that have GSA schedule contracts. It's an IDIQ. In that, I mean, it's an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. That means there's no money assigned to the contracts, but it's a contractual vehicle that the government can purchase off of if it so desires. So most agencies, if not all agencies, actually do use the contract, but they may not use it for your particular product or service, or they may prefer other vehicles for your product or service. Next slide, please. Are we there? There we go. All right, so I'm going to take a relatively deep dive into one website here, just to show you what's available. This is the U.S. Department of Agriculture homepage, and from on the left side you can see the popular topics for people. But in all government websites have a site index or a site map. So go to the site index. It's circled there at the top. Next slide, please. The site index will offer an alpha sort. So I scrolled down to the P's, and lo and behold, there's the procurement page. Next slide, please. So this takes us to the procurement page. And we're going to go into one specific aspect here, but excuse me. Bear with me a second. There's a lot of information here. On the left side, you can see the Business Opportunities button, and that's where we want to go. So click on that in the next slide, please. Now we have all of this stuff sitting in front of us. Doing business with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, procurement procedures and policies. It's a downloadable PDF. procurement or programs for small, disadvantaged, woman-owned businesses. So if you fit any, according to the Small Business Administration, if your business fits in any small business category, that's information that would be pertinent to you. The types of products and services purchased, that's huge for you. Directory of purchasing offices, the website addresses, and more. Next slide, please. Scrolling down, though, on this page, we come to the types of products and services purchased. Over on the right-hand side, you'll also notice the directory of purchasing offices. So after you look through the types of products and services purchased, you have an immediate list of people over there on the right side that you can download to start contacting. And again, if they're local, what you really, really want to do is go in there and meet with these people and tell them who you are, what you do. Next slide, please. The types of products and services purchased, again, it's downloadable. You scroll through here, you get the charts and lists in the following pages to show you the categories of goods and services purchased. Next slide, please. Oh, no, go back. I'm sorry. Go back. No, I'm sorry, not two slides, just one. Yeah. So on this page, we have, again, if you look on the second paragraph, the charts and lists on the following pages. So you can click on that chart thing, either on the second or third paragraph, and it takes you to what the USDA buys. And I should have added that as a slide, but for some reason I didn't. Next slide now, please. So now we want to determine how they buy. So once again, next slide. Go back to the business opportunities page here, and as we scroll down this page, we have the introduction, which is information on sort of the breadth and depth. Next slide, please. Where the procurement takes place, and this is the directory of the purchasing offices, okay? If it's not going to be a massive purchase, it won't take place in Washington, D.C. It'll take place at the local office. And this is another misconception that a lot of people have. More than 50% of the government purchasing takes place outside of Washington, D.C. It's in the field activities where they actually need the stuff and they need it quickly. So I would suggest to you, and most of the agencies are going to have very similar types of websites and very similar types of information. So if you were selling to the Department of Agriculture, at the bottom of that first paragraph it says Directory of USDA Purchasing Offices. I would click on that, I would bookmark that, I would print it out, and make sure that your salespeople have it. Okay? So as we scroll down a little more, GSA Advantage. To be on GSA Advantage, you need a GSA schedule, period. So if you decide that your product or service is going to require a GSA schedule, you can negotiate your own, which I do not recommend, or you can find a service that provides the negotiation for you. The reason you might want to consider using an outside service is simply that negotiating with the government is never as easy as one might assume. Okay? Next slide, please. All right. Purchasing procedures, micro purchases. The micro purchase I mentioned earlier are the credit card purchases, and it says $2,500 or less on this slide. That shows you that this slide hasn't been updated in a while. The micro purchase level is currently $3,000. Simplified acquisition procedures. Next slide, please. Those are for purchases between $2,500 and $100,000. sealed bid, negotiated procedures, sealed bid, sealed bidding, negotiated procedures. All of these are things that you can learn about through local resources, and we'll get there very shortly. Next slide, please. Commercial item acquisitions, that's going to be more along the lines of the stuff that's available through the GSA schedules. Central contractor registration, you have to register on CCR if you want to do business with the government. And after you register at CCR, it prompts you to go to your online reps and certs, the ORCA site. Okay. Then federal business ops, we already talked briefly about that, and you don't have to do fedbizops.gov. You can just use fbo.gov. It goes to the same place. Next slide, please. Okay. There's solicitations copies at all procurement offices. There's a procurement forecast that you can get through the Small Business Office. That's the OSDBU office. OSDBU stands for Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. It doesn't mean that larger businesses can't go there and get the same information. It's just set up for small business. Selling opportunities through GSA and the overall procurement policy, and there's the address for the procurement manager at GSA or at USDA at the bottom of the page. Next slide, please. So, and there's free and low-cost resources available locally. I assume the majority of you are in Nevada. So please start at the Nevada Procurement Outreach Program or the Nevada Small Business Development Center. These are people who are trained to show you the mechanics of doing business with the government. So all of those procurement methods that we just went through briefly on the preceding slides, they can tell you what each one means and how to be involved regardless of what you sell. So regardless of what you sell, the government's going to have a preferred way of buying it. Your job is to figure out how they buy it and then learn that process. These are great resources for that. Next slide, please. Local opportunities, there's 5 websites listed here. The first one is a directory by state from the Veterans Administration, and it lists activities in the state of Nevada. The second website is the Las Vegas VA Medical Center site, but it also lists the other Veterans Administration activities throughout Las Vegas. The third website there, and these are all interlinked, the third website is Doing Business with the Veterans Administration. So if you decide that VA is an agency you want to do business with, all of the agencies have a link to how to do business with this agency. Find that. It's usually a subset of that procurement homepage. So you start at the site index, you go down to procurement, and you're looking for the Doing Business with Us, and then you're looking for local stuff. The last two, or the next one is a USDA site. It's the Rural Development thing for Nevada. So USDA's got a small office, not a huge office, in Nevada that you can check out. And the final one is the Forest Service Region 5, which encompasses Nevada. Next slide, please. So just some local websites. American Express Open did a study a couple of years ago. So setting a realistic time frame is really important here. Number one, American Express found that it took an average of small businesses 20 months to win their first government contract, 20 months, so better than a year and a half. An average expense of $86,000 per year was spent to reach that first government contract. Now, this can be a cash outlay, or it can be devoting internal resources, or some combination of both. But this was the average that it took. So it's not going to be a quick process, and it's not going to necessarily be free. I'm trying to aim you at a lot of free resources here, but it's time-consuming. GSA schedule can be a good entry point, but the bottom line is, and the Amex study pointed this out, you got to bid to win. And when you do not win a bid, request a debrief on why. Next slide, please. You got to start meeting people. This is a relationship-driven market. I've written 2 books about the government market. The latest came out last December, Selling to the Government. The big thing here is it's a relationship-driven market. People like to buy from people they know, people they're comfortable with, people they purchased from before, because there's a trust factor there. Procurement people don't want something untried in their purchasing cycle, because it really exposes them to perhaps buying something from a questionable source. Or a source that can't deliver the same way their previous source did. So a couple of ways to do this. govevents.com is a free website where you can go and find events in your area. You can also post events there if you're hosting events. There's small business offices everywhere. Find them in your region. There's often in-agency events sponsored by the agency or sponsored by a company like Federal Business Council, which does in-agency events around the country to the tune of about 100 times a year. So they're pretty much in every state. Look for those. Local chapters of associations that deal with the government are great sources for this. Any educational sessions they have are liable to include some government people. And again, as I mentioned earlier, look on LinkedIn. Next slide, please. The government market is a never-ending education market. PTACs are Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. There's 92 of them around the country. One of the links that I aimed you to earlier is a local Nevada PTAC office. PTACs are sponsored by the Defense Logistics Agency, so it doesn't cost you anything. Set an appointment, go in, and start learning. Same thing with the Small Business Development Centers. These are really excellent local resources to help you get a grasp on how the government buys, how it does business, and how you might be able to participate. GMM is a Government Market Master Program at George Mason University. That is my program at George Mason University. Currently live sessions. By the end of September, we should have our webinars started as well. Again, associations and trade publications. Next slide, please. And the process really doesn't end. Once you've done this, it is incumbent upon you really to start over again. So if you have some success at one agency, I would suggest trying to grow that business in that agency rather than expand out. But if you feel that you can expand to other agencies, go back and start over. Next slide, please. The Government Market Master Program is the first bullet here. Second bullet is my home page, what we offer companies. GovSearch. GovSearch is a really neat tool. I mentioned when I was talking about the OMB 300s that there are paid services that offer you this. GovSearch has the OMB 300s. They have the 53s, which are specific to information technology. They also offer a list of about 200,000 federal employees, including mailing address, phone number, and for the most part, email addresses as well. It's a paid service. I've been using it for a long time. I find it really good. Government Express is one of my websites, but if you click on the resources, you'll find links to federal, state, and local procurement websites. Just sort of shortens your cycle. There's no fees there. OnVia is a contract tracking service for the government market. They cover federal, state, and local contracts. And CCR.gov, I believe we touched on earlier, it's required to register there if you want to do business with the government. You can go to my last slide before yours. want to thank you all for staying with us here for a while. I'm going to stay here for 20 minutes or so. My contact information is here. If you want to send me questions after, please use the email, but we're here for a while. But I believe we have an announcement from the Nevada Small Business Group.
Yeah, actually, Mark, we'll take some questions, and we got a couple right here. But what is a good publication for railings, guardrails, light gauge metalwork?
I would think that both Government Product News and American City and County would be the best initial places for that. Government Product News, you should be able to find them both at govpro.com.
Okay. Another question from Cynthia. They are a structural engineering firm that just received their DBE status from the Nevada Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. What is the best way for them to leverage this designation?
I would, because it's a state designation, I would go to the office that awarded them that and find out who the Small Business Liaison Officer is for the state of Nevada and ask for intros into the departments that would use that type of service.
Another question, what is a good place to start looking at research for potentially selling legal services to the government?
The government is full of lawyers. I'm not sure about that one. So whoever asked that question, shoot me an email. Let me see if I can find a couple of people who can answer that. I know the government does purchase some legal expertise on occasion, but I'm not sure how.
Okay. Another question, are contracts with the government typically longer than the public sector as far as terms and things like that? Longer as in longer physical documents or longer in duration? Probably both.
Okay. Longer physical documents, yes. And that's why you need outside counsel that's used to reading these, because when you sign a government contract, if you do not thoroughly understand all the terms and conditions, you might be subject to things that that you wouldn't otherwise agree to. Let me give you an example that it's not a recent example, but it illustrates the point. Reckitt and Coleman is the company that produces a product called Lysol. They were approached by two government agencies who said, the government would buy millions of dollars worth of this stuff every month if you got this type of contract. Well, they went out and got the contract, and the orders started coming in, but Reckitt and Coleman was used to selling by the railway car full. Their orders came in by quarts. So they were unable to fulfill literally any of the orders that were coming in. So basically what they did was offer a letter of supply off the contract they had to a couple of different vendors who were happy to ship by the quart. But if you don't understand the terms and conditions, you're liable to have a contract that could really hurt you rather than help you.
Okay. Is there state and local government that sets aside any information or funds for service-disabled veteran-owned businesses?
I don't know about the state and local. I'd be surprised if they were not included in the normal set-aside business. And most states, if not all states, have some sort of set-aside program. The service-disabled veteran-owned business at the federal level is a very, very hot topic right now. And, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it's pretty damn cool that they're allowing service-disabled vets to bid on very specific contracts with no competition from other companies. These guys, these men and women have paid a significant price, and we should do something for them. I would assume, you'll have to look at the specific governmental district you want to do business with to see if they are doing this. And it could be answered by a simple phone call to, the state, the county, or the city that you are looking to sell to.
Thanks. Another question is, is it realistic for a small architecture firm, maybe 3 or 4 people, to pursue work with the federal government? And are there agencies that would be better suited for that type of business?
Well, the answer is confusing. The answer is yes and no. If there, right now there's a base realignment and closure going on. Most of that work has already been bid out. But when something like that happens, you can assume that some facilities are going to be shutting down and others are going to be expanding. Look for local opportunities with the agencies. Are there renovations that are going to occur? A lot of the buildings here in D.C. are really old, and they need some renovation, but they're going to be bid on by national firms, et cetera. But there's 30,000 plus occupied sites around the country, offices, buildings, et cetera, not including military or postal facilities. Do they require architectural help? Yeah. So your job would be to find out who's responsible for facilities maintenance in those. So, again, go back to the Building Owners Management Association or the International Facilities Managers Association. Involvement in either of those organizations could lead you to making local contacts with governmental agencies that may require your help. Can small businesses do it? Sure. Do they have the resources to devote to it? Some make those resources available and some don't. It is not an easy process, so please do not think it's going to be easy coming in. But once you're there and they like what you do, you could have a pretty steady customer, even for an architectural firm of 3 or 4 people.
Right. Another question, what programs are available for potentially energy conservation and or sustainability initiatives that aren't necessarily contract-driven?
That you'd be talking about grants programs, that type of thing?
Potentially grant programs, or if there's the investment in the green energy sector?
You'd have to do that on an agency-by-agency basis, but and that may be pushed down to state and local level. There is grant money that comes from the federal government, but it's driven down to state and local governments for distribution for those programs. So I would look at the energy agencies within the states and see what kind of grants are available there. But there's also grants.gov. So you can go to a website, and it should be keyword searchable, and just look for those types of grants. The competition for those is going to be different, and I do not know anything about bidding on grants. But I have a person that I recommend, Kristen DeProspero, down in Georgia, has devoted herself to that business for a number of years, and she's quite capable in that arena.
Looking at sort of the United States as a landscape, are there certain regions or parts of the country that are potentially that generate more bids or generate more opportunities for people? Maybe outside of Nevada that people could bid. Businesses located within Nevada could bid for something in the southeast or northeast or anything like that.
Well, I would look for clusters of federal activity if federal business is what you're going for, but higher population densities are going to drive this. But if you're looking for federal activity, go to FEB, it's Federal Executive Board, FEB.gov, and there's 29 federal executive boards around the country. They are in major metropolitan areas where there is a significant cluster of federal activity. Now, the federal executive boards often interact with local governments as well, but that will identify the 28 major metros outside of Washington, D.C. that offer, opportunities in a broader sense.
Right. Are individuals able to leverage government resources, potentially looking into leasing building space or real estate space that's available? Is that something that the government looks into doing?
Does the government lease space, or does the government lease space to people?
No, leasing space from someone. Would the government do that?
Yeah, the government's real estate agent is the General Services Administration. The other half, you have the GSA schedules on the one side, which is the Federal Acquisition Service. The other part of the GSA is the Public Building Service. So if you just go to the GSA website, click on Public Building Service, what you'd want to do is go to the PBS website, look for the regional managers for the Public Building Service, and contact them and say, how do you acquire office space and how do we get on that list? Now, at present, the government probably has a surplus of office space, and if you haven't heard, the current Congress is interested in downsizing government. So that may be a tough area to get involved in at this particular time. It doesn't mean it's impossible, because a downsizing may mean that they need to jettison a larger facility to go to a smaller facility. So it could be a good time.
Right. We know you mentioned that you're working on your government master or your government market master program. What do those courses run as far as potentially price and time commitment?
The time commitment is, for the live classes, we're offering primarily half-day and full-day classes, but these are certificate classes taught by, not by George Mason professors. These are taught by my colleagues, people who sell to the government, who do business development with the government, who are marketing professionals in the government, and by business owners and managers who have been doing this a long time. We're looking at about $100 to $125 per class hour, and again, by September, the end of September, we'll have a number of these classes available on the web. Now, we certainly do not anticipate 4 or 8 hour webinars, so we'll chunk them down to probably 60 to 90 minutes like this. It's roughly a 60-minute gig. So those will be available, and the price model right now for the webinars is less expensive than the actual classroom time.
Right. I know you mentioned in your presentation using social networks, in particular LinkedIn, to search for government employees or potentially groups. Do you have any recommendations as far as search topics or groups that people could join?
Well, if you just go at LinkedIn on your homepage, of the upper right, you'll have the little search bar with the magnifying glass. If you drop down the search to groups and type in government, you'll find that there's over 6,000 different groups facing government. But put in the topic, your area of expertise. So the engineer, if you have a specific type of engineering, plug that phrase in there and see what groups pop up. In all likelihood, you'll find some government people in those groups as well. But with over 6,000 different groups facing government, you're probably going to find a variety of those groups just designed for the government.
Right. So we're gonna wrap it up, Mark. I appreciate your time, and just for everyone, I know we had a couple questions related to this, but this presentation, this recorded presentation, will be available on NevadaSmallBusiness.com within the next few business days. So this will be posted for everyone to look at. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/NevadaSmallBusiness, and you can also find us on Twitter. Same thing, NV Small Business. Coming up on September 8th, we're going to have Lon Safko. He's going to talk about the big picture social media marketing, September 8th at 9 a.m. Pacific. And this webinar will cover really why social media marketing is completely different from your conventional marketing, how to use social media to effectively reach audiences with powerful messaging, how to achieve 35% email conversion rate, and how to manage your company's online reputation. Should be very exciting. You can go ahead and register for that today at nsbank.com/webevent. Looking forward to seeing everyone on September 8th. And Mark, thank you again for your time this morning.
Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our webinar for today. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.